The first time I saw her, it wasn't in person. It was on a grainy security recording from a gas station nobody in Montana really cared about anymore. The kind of place you pass at night and hope you don't have to stop. Someone had pulled the footage weeks later because of a glitch. At least, that's what they said. I remember leaning over the counter while Old Man Harris replayed it on his dusty monitor. The rain came down in thin silver lines, barely visible in the camera's flicker. And there she was. Tall. Too tall, even for the frame. Barefoot on wet asphalt. Not moving. Not shivering. Just standing there. Staring at nothing. Like the world had already ended, and she'd missed the memo. Drunk, Harris muttered. I didn't answer. Something about the way she stood didn't look lost. It looked empty, like there was nowhere left for her to go. Nobody reported her missing. No car. No footprints that lasted longer than the rain. By morning, she was gone. And that should have been the end of it. It wasn't. A year later, I stood in a hall carved out of black stone older than my entire civilization, surrounded by beings who could crush me without thinking, and every single one of them was staring at her. Not because she had returned, but because she had returned pregnant. The Galactic Empress, ruler of 12 star systems, stood at the center of her own throne room, calm, composed, smiling. And when they demanded to know who had done this, she looked straight at me. My child, she said softly, belongs to him. That's how I learned the woman from the gas station had been the most powerful being in the galaxy. And somehow, she had chosen me. The silence didn't break all at once. It cracked, like pressure building behind glass that had never been meant to hold it. For a moment, no one spoke. Not the towering figures lining the chamber. Not the robed officials seated in tiers above us. Not even the guards, who stood frozen with weapons that hummed faintly in the air. Every eye was on her. Then the noise came. You dare. Contamination of the sovereign line. This is a violation of foundational law. The words overlapped, rising fast, sharp, cutting into each other until they stopped being sentences and became something closer to a storm. I didn't understand most of what they were saying, not the exact terms, not the legal phrasing, but I understood the tone. Disgust. Not at me. At her. I felt her hand brush mine, just for a second. Not a grand gesture. Not something anyone else would notice. Just enough pressure to remind me she was there. Steady. Unshaken. At the far end of the hall, one of them stood. He was taller than the rest, his presence somehow heavier, like gravity bent a little differently around him. His skin carried a faint glow beneath the surface, patterns shifting in slow, controlled pulses. Authority, I guessed. The kind you don't question. You abandoned your throne, he said, his voice low, but it carried through the entire chamber like it had nowhere else to go. You vanished without council consent. You triggered Regency protocols. And now you return, in this condition. His gaze moved, slowly, deliberately, from her to me. I'd been looked at before, judged, dismissed. I'd spent most of my life being the guy people overlooked unless something needed fixing. This wasn't that. This was like being measured against something ancient and already found lacking. The father, he continued, each word precise, is of an unrecognized species. No treaty, no genetic clearance, no diplomatic standing. He paused, as if that were not sufficient. His expression shifted, just slightly. You bring him here. The chamber stirred again, quieter this time, but more focused. Less chaos, more agreement. I didn't move, didn't look away, didn't bow. I didn't know their rules, didn't know their gestures, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to act like I was less than them just because they decided I was. Beside me, she finally spoke. I did not abandon my throne. Her voice cut clean through the noise. Not louder, not harsher, just certain. I stepped away from it. A ripple went through the chamber. Subtle but real. The tall one, whoever he was, tilted his head slightly. You left 12 sovereign systems without governance, he said. 3 border territories destabilized. Trade routes collapsed. 2 alliances dissolved within the first cycle of your absence. He took a step forward. That is not stepping away. That is dereliction. She didn't flinch. I knew exactly what would happen, she replied. That caught them off guard. I could tell. The shift wasn't in their words. It was in the way the room leaned, just a fraction, toward her. You knew, he repeated. Yes. And you chose it anyway. Yes. Now the silence came back. But it wasn't the same as before. Before, it had been shock. Now, it was calculation. Then you admit, he said slowly, that your absence was intentional. I do. And that during that absence, his gaze dropped, briefly, to her stomach. You engaged in an unsanctioned biological union with a lower species. Something in my chest tightened at that. Lower. She didn't even glance down. I engaged, she said, in a relationship of my choosing. The word choosing landed differently. I could feel it, even if I didn't understand all their laws. Choice wasn't something they were used to hearing from her. The man's expression hardened. You no longer possess that right. That was the first time I felt her change. Not visibly, not in posture, but something shifted in the air around her, like the temperature dropped just enough to notice. I am still Empress, she said. You were, he corrected immediately. Your authority was suspended the moment you disappeared. Under Regency law, your decisions are subject to review. Your status. My status, she interrupted, was never revoked. A pause. A flicker in his expression. Brief. Controlled. But it was there. Not yet, he said. There it was. Not yet. That's when I understood. This wasn't just anger. This was opportunity. They weren't reacting to what she'd done. They were using it. Using me. Using the child. Using that year she'd been gone to build a case they'd been waiting for. You have compromised the integrity of the sovereign line. Another voice called out from the council tiers above. The genetic protocols exist to preserve stability across systems. This, a sharp gesture in our direction, is contamination. More voices joined in. Instability. Emotional deviation. Cognitive compromise. I didn't know all their words, but I knew that one. Compromise. They weren't just saying she broke rules. They were saying she couldn't think straight. That she wasn't fit to rule. I looked at her then. Really looked. She stood there, surrounded by power older than anything I could comprehend. Accused. Isolated. Measured from every angle. And she was still smiling. Not mocking. Not defiant. Just calm. Like she already knew how this would play out. They will convene a tribunal, the tall one said at last, his voice settling the room again. A full review of your capacity to rule. Your condition will be evaluated. His eyes moved to me again, and the human will be examined as evidence. Evidence. That's what I was to them. Not a person, not even a mistake. A piece of proof. I should have felt small standing there. Out of place. Like I didn't belong in a room like that. But I didn't. Because the woman beside me, the one they were trying to tear apart, she didn't look broken. She didn't look unstable. She looked like the same person I'd seen standing in the rain that night. Except now, she wasn't alone. And for the first time since I'd walked into that hall, I realized something. They weren't just trying to remove her. They were afraid of what she had become. If you've watched this far, then this story is really interesting to you. Please confirm it by clicking like under this video. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will help me understand what story to publish for you next. Let's move on. They didn't let me walk beside her. That was the first thing I noticed once the shouting died down and the decisions started getting made. Not loud decisions. Those had already happened, but the quiet ones. The ones that actually mattered. Guards moved in, not aggressively, but with purpose. One stepped between us, just enough to create space. Another gestured toward a marked section of the hall, lower, off to the side. I didn't need a translator to understand what that meant. Not her equal. Not even close. Petitioner's position, one of them said, his voice flat. I almost laughed. Petitioner. Like I'd filed paperwork to be here. I glanced at her. For a second, just a second, her eyes met mine. There was something there, apology maybe, or frustration. Hard to tell with her people. They didn't show things the way we did. But her hand moved, subtle, fingers flexing once. Stay? So I did. I stepped where they told me to stand. And suddenly, the room felt bigger. Not physically, just the distance. Between me and her. Between me and them. Between me and anything that made sense. From where I stood, I could see all of them clearly now. 7 feet tall on average. Skin like polished stone or shifting light, depending on where you looked. Patterns moving beneath the surface. Bioluminescent, like something alive under glass. Every detail about them said the same thing. Old, powerful, certain. And then there was me, 34, calloused hands. A jacket I'd cleaned as best I could, but it still smelled faintly like oil and steel. Boots that had seen more gravel roads than polished floors. I didn't belong here, and they knew it. One of them leaned slightly toward another, something flickering across his jawline, Communication, I guessed. Their version of whispering. I caught a word. Primitive. That one didn't need translation. Another voice followed, quieter, almost curious. He does not display submission behavior. Lack of awareness, came the reply. No, the first one said. Lack of conditioning. They were talking about me like I was a piece of equipment they hadn't decided how to categorize yet. Honestly, I've been talked about worse. At the center of the hall, she stood alone now. Where I'd been next to her minutes ago, there was empty space. Deliberate space. Symbolic, I realized. Separation. They weren't just isolating me. They were isolating her from me. A statement. The tall one, Devran, I'd heard someone call him, stepped forward again. The tribunal will convene at first cycle, he announced. Until then, the subject will remain under observation. Subject. Not empress. Not ruler. Subject. And the human? Another voice asked. Devran didn't look at me right away. When he did, it was brief. Dismissive. He will be contained within the Eastern Residency Wing. Contained. I almost corrected him. Almost said, you mean housed. But something told me he meant exactly what he said. Before I could think about it further, 2 guards approached. This way. I didn't move immediately. Not out of defiance. Just instinct. I looked at her again. This time, she turned fully. Protocol broke, just for a second. She took a step toward me before stopping herself. Daniel, she said. My name sounded different in her voice. Softer than anything else in that room. I'm here, I replied. Simple. But it mattered. Her gaze searched mine. Quick, precise, like she was checking something. Then she nodded. Once. That was all she needed. The guards didn't touch me, but they didn't have to. I walked with them. Every step echoed too loud in that place. As we moved toward the exit, I could feel it. Hundreds of eyes tracking me. Not with anger now. With something worse. Assessment. Value. Or lack of it. The doors opened, and the air changed. Cooler. Quieter. Less heavy. We walked through corridors that didn't look built. They looked grown. Smooth surfaces, no seams, faint hum beneath the walls like the whole place was alive in a way I couldn't understand. Eastern Wing. One of the guards said, more to the space than to me. I didn't bother asking questions. Didn't seem like the kind of place where answers were given freely. Eventually, they stopped in front of a door. It slid open without a sound. Inside, I stepped in. The room was large. Too large, actually. Everything felt scaled up. The bed, the ceiling, even the window that stretched higher than any wall I'd ever had in my life. Temperature was off, too. Cooler than comfortable. Not unbearable. Just not for me. The door closed behind me. No lock sound. No visible mechanism. But I knew. Contained. I walked slowly across the room, taking it in. A table. Smooth surface. No edges. A chair, too tall. A panel on the wall that probably did something important if you knew how to use it. And silence. Real silence. The kind that presses in after too much noise. I sat on the edge of the bed. It didn't creak. Didn't shift. Just held. For a moment, I let everything catch up. The hall. The council. The way they looked at her. The way they looked at me. And then, the gas station. That flickering footage. Her, standing in the rain like she had nothing left. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. You really picked the wrong planet to disappear on, I muttered. A small breath of something close to a laugh escaped me, then faded. Because the truth was, she hadn't picked wrong. She'd picked the only place no one would look. And somehow, she'd found me. A knock came at the door. Not loud. Not forceful. Just deliberate. I straightened slightly. Yeah. I called out. The door slid open. And standing there was not a guard. It was someone older. You could tell just by the way they held themselves. Not rigid like the others. Not sharp. Measured. Observing. Their patterns were dimmer, slower. Experienced. You are Daniel Brooks, they said. Not a question. Yeah. They stepped inside without waiting for permission. I am High Minister Alara Vane, they said. And I would like to understand. Their gaze moved over me, not with disgust. Not even with curiosity. Something else. Why she chose you. There it was. Not what are you. Not what have you done. Why you? I leaned back slightly, considering the question. Then I shrugged. Honestly, I said, I think she just needed someone who didn't care who she was. A pause. Longer than expected. Something shifted in their expression. Not much, but enough. Interesting, Alara said quietly. They turned slightly, glancing toward the door. The tribunal will not be kind to either of you. I figured. And yet you remain. I met their gaze. Yeah, I said. I do. Another pause. Then, softer this time. Then you may be more relevant than we assumed. They turned and left without another word. The door closed, and I was alone again. But something had changed. Not in the room. Not in the situation. In the way they were starting to look at me. Not as nothing. Not anymore. Just not as something they understood yet. They didn't start with me. That was the second thing I noticed when the tribunal proceedings began. Not officially, not in the grand hall, but in the quiet, controlled way information started circulating. They were building a narrative, and I wasn't the center of it. She was. What she had done. Where she had gone. Why she had abandoned everything. By the time they finally brought me back into the chamber, the room felt different. Less chaotic than before. More organized. Like a courtroom. 7 figures sat elevated above the rest now, arranged in descending order, their presence heavier than anyone else in the room. Judges, I figured. Or whatever passed for them. She stood below them. Alone. Again. Her robes had changed. Restored. Formal. Unmistakably imperial. No sign of the torn fabric from the day she walked in. No trace of the woman from the rain. Except I knew better. From across the chamber, I could still see it. The smallest tension in her left hand. Barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for. They'd cleaned her up, but they hadn't changed her. Proceed. One of the judges said, their voice older than the rest. Thin, but sharp enough to cut through everything. Devran stepped forward. Of course it was him. The subject's absence spans 13 rotational cycles. He began, his tone precise, controlled. During this period, no communication was issued, no authorization granted, and no delegation of authority enacted. He gestured, and a projection appeared above the chamber. Maps, movement lines, data I couldn't fully understand, but the meaning was clear. Damage, consequences. 3 border systems destabilized. 2 trade corridors collapsed. Internal factions mobilized in her absence. The integrity of the ascendancy was compromised. His gaze shifted slightly toward her, all while the Empress engaged in undocumented activities. Undocumented. That was one way to put it. The tribunal must determine, he continued, whether this behavior constitutes temporary dereliction or permanent incapacity. There it was again. Incapacity. I felt my jaw tighten. They weren't just accusing her of leaving. They were building a case that she shouldn't be allowed to come back. Call the first testimony, the judge said. Devran didn't hesitate. The tribunal calls Daniel Brooks. Of course. I stepped forward. The floor felt colder this time. More exposed. Every eye in the room followed me. Not with curiosity now, but with expectation. They weren't looking at me to understand me. They were looking at me to confirm something they already believed. I stopped where they indicated. No seat. No platform. Just a space. State your designation, one of the judges said. I almost smirked. Daniel Brooks, I replied. Structural engineer. Bridge repair, mostly. A pause. That wasn't the kind of answer they expected. Species designation, the judge clarified. Human, I said. That seemed to satisfy them enough. For the record, Devran added smoothly. The witness originates from a pre-relevant civilization within the Orion Spur. No formal standing within the assembly. I didn't react. Didn't give him anything. Daniel Brooks, the judge continued. You will provide an account of your initial contact with the subject. Subject. I glanced at her, just for a second, then back at them. You want to know how I met her? I said. Yes. I exhaled slowly. Not because I was nervous, because I needed to keep it simple. Truth usually worked better that way. It was late, I began. Cold. October, I think. Rain coming down hard enough to blur everything past a few feet. The projection above shifted. Not to something they created, to something they found. The gas station. Grainy footage. Black and white. There she was, standing exactly the way I remembered. Or the way I'd first seen her. The room leaned into it. I could feel it. She wasn't moving. I continued. No car. No bag. No sign she'd come from anywhere or was going anywhere. I took a breath. I thought she was in trouble. That part mattered. Because it was the truth. I pulled over, I said. Walked up to her. Asked if she needed help. I could still see it. Clear as the day it happened. She didn't answer at first. I said quietly. Just looked at me like she wasn't sure what I was. A faint shift in the room. Not mockery. Interest. Eventually, I went on. She said one thing. I paused, because I could still hear it in her voice. I have nowhere left to go. The words landed heavier than anything else I'd said. The projection froze on her image. Rain streaking down. Barefoot. Alone. And that was it. Devrin asked, his tone edged with disbelief. That was enough, I said. A flicker of something crossed his expression. Annoyance, maybe. You did not question her origin? He pressed. No. You did not report her to your authorities? No. You did not consider the potential risk of harboring an unknown extraterrestrial entity. I almost laughed. Where I'm from, I said, you don't leave someone standing in the rain if they say they've got nowhere to go. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Not approval, but not dismissal either. Describe her condition, one of the judges said. I looked at the projection again, at that frozen image, then back at them. She was exhausted, I said. Not physically, not like she'd been running. I shook my head slightly, like she'd been holding something up for too long, and finally let it drop. Silence. Real silence. She didn't talk much the first couple days, I added. Didn't eat much either. Didn't ask questions. I hesitated, then said it anyway. She just existed. The word felt small, but it was the closest thing I had. And you took her into your residence, Devrin said. Yeah. Without understanding her identity, her status, her potential threat. I met his gaze. She didn't look like a threat. Another ripple. Subtle, but there. And at no point, he continued, did you consider that this individual might be the sovereign ruler of a multi-system empire? I shrugged slightly. No. A pause. Then, quietly, she didn't look like a ruler either. That one hit. I could feel it. Not just in him. In all of them. Because the image above us still showed her. Standing in the rain. With nothing. No crown. No power. No authority. Just a woman who had nowhere left to go. And what did she do? The judge asked. During her time under your care. I thought about it. About the trailer. About the silence. About the nights. At first, I said, nothing. I let that settle. Then added, and that's how I knew something was really wrong. The room didn't react immediately, but I saw it. In the way they looked at her now. Not as a ruler. Not as a subject. But as something they hadn't fully accounted for. Not yet. And for the first time since this started, I realized something. They were hearing me. Maybe not all of them, but enough. They didn't like where my story was going. I could tell before anyone spoke. It wasn't in their words. It was in the way the room shifted. Less certainty. More calculation. Like they were trying to figure out how to take something simple and make it dangerous again. Continue, the judge said. I nodded slightly. She stayed, I said. That's the part you're probably having trouble with. No one reacted, but they were listening. For a while, she barely spoke. I went on. Slept a lot. Woke up in the middle of the night sometimes. Didn't say anything. Just sat there like she was trying to remember how to exist. I didn't look at her. Not yet. Because if I did, I'd see it again. That version of her. And I needed to stay steady. She didn't eat at first, I said. Not our food, anyway. Took a few tries to figure out what she could handle. A faint ripple moved through the observers. Scientists, probably. Filing that away. She didn't ask questions, I continued. Didn't tell me who she was. Didn't try to explain anything. Devrin stepped forward slightly. And you did not inquire, he said. No. Why? Simple question. Simple answer. Because she didn't want to be found. That landed. Not loudly, but deeply. I could feel it in the way the room stilled. Explain, one of the judges said. I took a breath. You don't run like that unless you're trying to disappear, I said. No phone. No car. No direction. Just gone. I glanced up at the projection again. At the gas station footage. You don't end up standing in the rain like that unless something behind you is worse than anything ahead. Silence. Not the kind that rejects. The kind that thinks. So I didn't ask. I finished. Because whatever she was running from, I figured she'd tell me when she was ready. Devrin's expression tightened. And she did. Yeah. When? I thought about it. Third day, I said. Maybe fourth. Hard to keep track at the time. What did she say? I hesitated. Not because I didn't remember. Because I remembered too clearly. She said she was broken. The word echoed in the chamber. Not translated. Understood. A few of them shifted. Subtle, but real. And you accepted this, Devrin pressed. Without verification. Without context. I looked at him. Where I'm from, I said. You don't ask someone to prove they're hurting before you help them. Another ripple, stronger this time. I saw it move through the lower tiers of the chamber. Not the council, not the elites, the others. Observers. Civilians, maybe. She started helping after a while. I continued. Small things at first. Cleaning. Fixing stuff around the trailer. I let a faint breath out. She's strong. You know that. That one almost sounded like a joke. No one laughed. But she didn't use it like you do. I added. Not at first. What do you mean? A judge asked. I mean she worked like it mattered, I said. Not like it was expected. I shifted slightly, grounding myself. We rebuilt part of the fence line behind the property, I said. Old wood, warped from weather. Took us 2 days. 2 days, Devran repeated. For a task your species could complete in minutes with basic mechanization. Yeah, I said. Probably. Then why? Because she wanted to finish something. That cut him off. Clean. I saw it again, that flicker. That moment where he didn't have a ready answer. She didn't rush, I said. Didn't optimize. Didn't calculate. I looked up at them. She just stayed with it. Until it was done. Silence. I let it sit. Then added. First time I saw her smile was when we finished that fence. That changed something. I could feel it. Not in the council. In the room. In the people who weren't speaking. She started asking questions after that. I said. Simple stuff. Things you'd think she already knew. Such as, the judge prompted. I almost smiled. Why crickets make noise at night? I said. What coffee is supposed to taste like? Why people sit on porches and don't do anything for hours? A faint sound moved through the chamber. Not laughter. Something close. And you answered, Devran said. Yeah. And this interaction, he gestured slightly, continued for the duration of her absence. Yeah. Without disclosure of her identity. Yeah. And without any attempt to re-establish her sovereign responsibilities. That one wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I finally looked at her. Really looked. She was still standing there, exactly as before. Perfect posture. Controlled expression. But I saw it. The smallest shift in her breathing. They weren't gone, I said quietly. The room focused. What? Her responsibilities, I clarified. They weren't gone. Devran narrowed his gaze. Explain. I held it. Didn't look away. She carried them with her. I said. Every day. A pause. Then why, he pressed, did she not return? I exhaled slowly. Because this part mattered. Because she didn't think she could. That landed harder than anything else. I felt it. Across the entire chamber. She thought if she came back the same way she left, I said, nothing would change. My voice stayed steady. But something did. I let my eyes move back to her. Just for a second. Then back to them. She did. Silence. Deep. Uncomfortable. And the footage, one of the judges said slowly, gesturing to the projection. You claim this as evidence of her condition upon arrival. Yeah. It shows her alone, the judge continued. Unprotected. Unaccompanied. Yeah. No display of authority. No technological support. No sign of command infrastructure. Yeah. A pause. Longer this time. Then why, the judge asked, does this matter? I looked up at the image again. At the woman standing in the rain. The one they didn't recognize. The one they refused to understand. Because, I said quietly, that's who she was when she got to my world. I let the words settle. Then finished. Not your empress. A breath. Just a woman who had nothing left. The room didn't react immediately. But something had shifted. I could feel it. Not enough to change the outcome. Not yet. But enough to make them hesitate. And in a place like this, hesitation mattered. They tried to take it back. Everything that shifted, every hesitation, every moment of doubt, they moved fast to close it. You could feel it in the room, like a pressure sealing cracks before they spread too far. Devran didn't wait. The testimony is noted, he said sharply, stepping forward again. But it is irrelevant to the core issue. Of course it was. To him. The tribunal is not concerned with anecdotal emotional states, he continued. We are concerned with sovereign stability. There it was again. Stability. A word that sounded clean. Controlled. Safe. The subject's behavior demonstrates clear deviation from established cognitive patterns, he said. Extended absence. Unauthorized displacement. Emotional attachment to an inferior species. Reproductive violation of genetic law. Each phrase hit like it had been rehearsed. Probably had. This is not recovery, he finished. It is deterioration. The word echoed. Deterioration. Like she was something breaking down. Something failing. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. You may respond, the judge said. To her. Not me. She stepped forward. For the first time since this started, I saw it. The shift. Not weakness. Focus. The kind that comes when someone decides they're done being pushed. My absence, she said, her voice calm but carrying, was not a failure of duty. Devrin's expression didn't change. It resulted in measurable destabilization across 3 systems, he replied. It revealed existing fractures, she corrected. Fractures your council chose to ignore until I was no longer present to compensate for them. That landed, harder than anything I'd said, because it wasn't just defense. It was accusation. A ripple went through the chamber. Subtle, but real. You deflect responsibility, Devrin said. I redefine it, she answered. A pause. You were absent, he pressed. I was recovering, she replied. You were compromised. I was human. That one changed everything. The word hung there. Human. Not as an insult. Not as a classification. As a choice. Devrin's patterns flickered sharply. You are not human, he said. No, she agreed. Her gaze shifted slightly. Toward me. But I learned from one. Silence. Real silence. Not imposed. Not controlled. Felt. You speak of recovery, one of the judges said carefully. Define it. She didn't hesitate. Recovery, she said, is the restoration of function after damage. Formal. Precise. Their language. Then, damage, she continued, occurs when systems are forced beyond sustainable limits without relief. She stepped forward again. By that definition, I was damaged long before I left. A murmur spread. Not loud, but undeniable. You claim prior impairment, Devrin said. I stated as fact. Unsupported. Unacknowledged, she corrected. Another pause. Then Devrin shifted tactics. Even if we accept this claim, he said, it does not justify your subsequent actions. His gaze moved, briefly, to her stomach. Your condition. There it was. Back to that. Always back to that. This is not a matter of personal restoration, he continued. It is a breach of sovereign genetic protocol. The chamber steadied again. Familiar ground. Control. Order. This child, he said, represents an unregulated hybridization event between incompatible species. Incompatible. I almost smiled. He kept going. No prior case exists. No predictive model ensures stability. No legal framework supports its legitimacy. He turned to the judges. This is not innovation. A pause. It is biological sedition. The word cut through the room. Sharper than anything else. Sedition. Not just wrong. Dangerous. Punishable. I saw her hand tighten slightly. Just for a second. Then still again. You may respond, the judge said. She didn't speak immediately. And for the first time, I realized something. They were going to win this. Not because they were right. Because they had the system. The words. The structure. Everything built to define what was acceptable. And she had truth. But truth didn't always win in places like this. I felt it then. That pull. That moment where you decide whether to stay quiet. Or break something. I stepped forward. I wasn't supposed to. I knew that. I didn't care. Permission to speak, I said. The room shifted instantly. Sharp. Focused. You have already provided testimony, one of the judges said. I know, I replied. But you're missing something. That got their attention. Devrin's gaze snapped to me. You will remain. She didn't break your system, I said. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. She survived it. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. I could feel it now. Every eye. Every judgment. Every calculation. But I didn't stop. You keep saying she violated your laws, I continued. That she destabilized things. That she made a bad decision. I looked at them, one by one. But none of you are asking why she had to leave in the first place. That hit. I saw it. Not all of them. But enough. You built a system where the person at the top isn't allowed to feel anything, I said. Not grief. Not loneliness. Not exhaustion. My voice stayed steady. But those things don't disappear just because you don't like them. A pause. They build. I glanced at her, then back at them. And eventually, they break something. No one interrupted. No one moved. So yeah, I said quietly. She left. I took a breath. And for the first time in her life, she got to be something other than what you needed her to be. Silence. Then Devrin spoke. Cold. Controlled. This is not relevant. It is, I said, because now, I understood. This whole thing isn't about law. I looked at him directly. It's about control. That did it. The room shifted again. Sharp. Uncomfortable. You are out of order, one of the judges said. Probably, I replied. But I'm not wrong. A pause. Long measured. Then the oldest judge leaned forward slightly. You claim, they said slowly, that the subject's actions were not a failure, but a correction. Yeah, I said. And the child, the judge continued. Is that also a correction? I didn't hesitate. Yeah. Explain. I exhaled. Because this was the part they really didn't want to hear. She didn't choose me because I'm special, I said. She chose me because I didn't care who she was. A ripple. She didn't need another system, I added. She needed a person. Silence. Deep. And the kid. I finished. That's what happens when someone finally gets to choose their own life. No one spoke. Not immediately. But I saw it. The shift. Not in Devran. Not in the council. In the room. In the people who weren't supposed to matter. They were listening. And for the first time, I realized something. We weren't losing anymore. Not completely. Not yet. It wasn't the council that decided it. It was the room. At first, it was just a sound. Low, uneven, almost uncertain. Then it grew. Not voices. Not words. Something deeper. Agreement. Recognition. I didn't understand it, but I felt it. The judges looked at each other. For the first time, they hesitated. Then the oldest one spoke. The tribunal finds no sufficient evidence of sovereign incapacity. The words echoed. The Empress retains her authority. A breath moved through the chamber. However, her consort will be granted provisional status pending review. Provisional. Not acceptance. Not rejection. A beginning. I walked back to her. This time, no one stopped me. She took my hand, tight. They'll keep pushing, she whispered. Yeah, I said. I placed my hand over her stomach. Felt it. A small movement. Real. They can try. Above us, the projection flickered once more. The gas station, the rain, her standing alone. Then it faded. Because that woman wasn't alone anymore. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Write in the comments what moment in this story impressed you the most. And also check out the other videos that just appeared on your screen. See you in the next video.